Hey everybody, it's Eugene Lisho, and welcome to Forensics Talks. This is episode 65, and today my guest is Martino Jerian, who is going to be speaking to us about digital video evidence. Now, as always, we are streaming on multiple platforms, so we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. And if you are on YouTube or Facebook, I think you can put comments into the chat window if you want. And as always, the first thing that I like to see is where people are from. So go ahead. If you're up in the chat window, I'm going to say hello to everybody. But by all means, please let us know what city you're from or what country you're watching from. That's always interesting to know. Along the way, as we are speaking, if you can, if you have any questions, just pop them in there. I often forget or I get caught up, but I'll do my best to go in there and then have a look and try to post some of those. If there's any good questions, I'll have them pop up directly. Okay, we're going to get started right into it. And today, as many of you know, my guest is Martino Jerian, and he's the CEO and founder of Amp Software, which is recognized as a leading company for image and video forensics for public safety and national security. Martino graduated in electronic engineering from the University of Trieste in Italy and in 2005, and his thesis project is what prompted him to get into founding Amp Software in 2008, and I'm definitely going to be asking him about that. He's got extensive software engineering experience designing and developing a line of AMP software products. He's taught courses at the university level related to investigations, forensics, and intelligence. He's published several scientific papers, some of which we're going to bring up here, a ton of blog posts and stuff, and really an overwhelming amount of information that's available. But today, Martino is focused on improving the relationship between science and justice during forensic investigations and the need for proper education and training on image and video analysis, creating awareness and to some of the challenge related to proper use of video evidence, especially in relation to cybersecurity and also artificial intelligence. So let me bring him in here. There we go. Martino, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Hi, Eugene. Thanks for having me.
All right. We've only spoken sort of online just for a little bit, but I've known of you for years now. I've heard the name and I think through David Spreadrow, Spready.
He spoke about a lot about you as well.
Yeah. Well, this will be the longest conversation that I think we've had. So yeah. So I want to ask you about the beginnings, and one of the, and when I say the beginning, I mean before actually you were taking the electronic engineering. So I have a little caught wind here that there's something about a rock star, a writer, and professional snowboarder.
Yeah. It was when I was young. Actually, I say I want to be an inventor when you are a kid, and I think actually doing software is nowadays one of the closest things, and it's great because with software you can invent everything and you don't need materials and stuff.
Right.
And I mean, imagination is the freedom. But it's I played guitar. I had a few bands. I did a lot of snowboarding when I was young, and I still do it, even if I'm not young anymore. I like to write and to read a lot. So yeah, but at the end, I'm a geek, and this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, no problem. And then let's talk about I mean, you obviously were a technical person because you decided to go into electronic engineering. I did 2 years of electronic engineering, and it wasn't for me. I switched to aerospace after, but I mean, it was a tough program, but obviously very fulfilling too with a lot of stuff that you're learning. So how did you first get the idea to start doing like the image processing stuff?
Let's say that I was always interested about image processing in general during the university. And I think what is really fascinating is that it's actually mathematics, pretty complicated sometimes, not always. But in general, it's some mathematics that anybody can perceive and understand the results, even if they don't understand the mathematics. And it's the beauty and also the damnation of this topic, because then, as I say often, people gives for granted image and video evidence because it seems too easy, but actually it's not.
Yeah. And when you were doing you do like a 4th or 5th year thesis at university, and there's I don't know the exact story, but somebody approached you and they said, "Hey, what's this software?" Or they showed you something. You said, "I can do better than that." What happened there?
Yeah. So it's I started this project at university, and it's a project thesis that we did in cooperation with the Scientific Investigation Department of Carabinieri, which is our military police. They even have a CSI style fiction in their lab. And actually, when I went there visiting them, they were filming for the movie.
Oh, okay.
Very nice. And so they had these issues with images and videos, which are still the pillar of what we do every day. So images and videos as evidence are growing.
Okay.
There are many, and every year there are more.
Well, can you talk about your thesis though? Like, what were you actually working on, and then, how did that migrate over?
Yeah. It's no. It's actually, this is my thesis.
Okay.
Yeah. So the problem is that there is a lot of footage, and it was back through in 2005, and it's still true nowadays. And often the quality is not good enough. Okay. So and in literature, actually, there are a lot of papers and algorithms to solve most of the issues when possible, but they were not really available to actual investigators and forensic experts. And then there is so we need to make it practically usable, these algorithms. And then you need to, when you process an image, you need to do it in a certain way, because you're touching evidence. So you must work scientifically in a transparent way. And it's not just tweaking a few sliders in Photoshop until you see something better. So this was the starting point of the thesis. We have these issues, and my university department was actually working on the same issues in a non-forensic settings, of course. So they say, well, maybe we have the skills to do it, and they had a contact with this scientific investigation department of Carabinieri, and they did a thesis proposal that I took. So I developed what is basically the very first prototype of what is called now Amp5. I did it in MATLAB. It was very, very minimal, but a few of the algorithms that I implemented during the thesis are still in the software.
They're still in the software. Yeah, I was going to ask that. That's kind of cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool. And so how soon after university was Amped actually founded?
It was in 2008, so it was like about 3 years ago. After.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, after I finished, actually, while I was finishing the thesis, I was presenting this work that they did in a couple of conferences. I presented a conference in London, and there was the meeting from the EMSI, European Network of Forensic Science Institute. And I presented a few of the algorithms and the idea at their event. And I saw, people is interested about this stuff. And I always had this idea of creating something on my own. So yeah, maybe there is an opportunity. And actually, it was in that context, the story that you mentioned, one of the persons, which became one of my first customers actually, and a very good friend, showed me some product that was on the market at the time. The time forensic video software were very expensive and very limited. And I look at that, and I say, I think I can do something much better and much cheaper. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me like, thinking, this student doesn't know what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. But I'm a bit stubborn,
Yeah, and sure enough, it happened. And when you first began, how big? Like, did you have other people working with you? Did you have a small team, or was it just you?
When I started,
when you began the company, was it just you, or were there a couple other people?
We had actually, we started with an incubation project inside the scientific park where I'm still located. So before founding the company, it's a kind of, they call it first mile incubator. So they put some money to sponsor my idea, and before founding the actual company, and until I had a first, let's say, version and some interested customers. And at that time, I had two former colleagues from the university, some friends. But then after how that was working, after when we actually founded the company, I had to live on my own, let's say. So I didn't have money to pay them when actually we started. So I was alone for about 1 year, I guess, and I did everything from developing the software, support, sales, administration, really everything.
Yeah. I want to bring something up on the screen here because I
Yeah.
think it's really interesting. And this is actually from one of your blogs.
Mhm.
And the reason I bring this up is when I went through this, it has like a whole bunch of issues that are really important. So you were invited to the European Parliament to talk about the issues surrounding video evidence,
Yeah.
like old issues, new issues, and things like that. So, and I'm going to use this sort of as a framework for some of the topics we want to
Yeah.
discuss. But can you tell me how did you get invited or involved, and what? I mean, the fact that they even invited to talk about video evidence, I think, says something about the level of importance and awareness.
Yeah, actually, we proactively approached them, and we started interacting at an institutional level because I realized, okay, we started working with forensic experts, okay, and we, together with the software, we provide training. You see a lot of blog posts about very technical things. Then we widen a bit the topic, the kind of audience with the investigators, first responders, with also we have a product for them, and we try to teach the basic thing about the problems, the pitfalls that you can have while working on video evidence. But then we realize that the problem is so important that we should create a culture and educate the public about the importance of images and videos and video evidence, because it is affecting privacy, security, justice on so many levels. So we started this project, and we found some a member of the European Parliament who hosted us for this event, and we invited a lot of people, and there was some quite good discussion.
There was one of the topics or one of the points that you brought up in that was the fact that the general public or people who are not technical, the judges, maybe some of the investigators, they don't understand and they're easily misled. Right. So is that something that you've experienced or seen before, or what's your opinion about the general level of knowledge about security camera video?
It's very low, and the problem, as I say very often, is that they don't know to have a problem. This is the big issue, because if you know that you have a problem, you can try to solve or at least ask for help. While for video, say, oh, come on, everybody can watch a movie or take a photo, hit play on YouTube. So why we need an expert or some specialized tool to analyze video? And if you get it wrong, consequences can be very bad.
Yeah, and I think, well, maybe it's because everybody's so used to, they have their phones and they can easily, take a
Yeah.
video and then they review it. They go, yeah, that's what I saw. It's the video. But maybe people don't realize that CCTV and these low cost systems, especially and the stuff that was, 15, 20 years ago, is not the same as your new iPhone. So
yeah, but even with iPhones and good quality cameras or video on the internet, you may remember there was that video from Putin that they say that it was manipulated because there was his hand going into the microphone, and actually they found a high resolution video, and the video was fine, at least from that point of view, and that was a compression artifact that can create kind of fake details and remove, let's say, real details. And if you don't know it, you can get kind of a fake detail for a scar or for a number of a license plate. It's very dangerous.
Yeah. And from my perspective, even the complexity of digital video evidence is astonishing to me because, and again, it's not my area, but in dealing with a lot of the video analysts and such, one of the things I'll find is that, they're talking about very specific details, like, this file from, 8 years ago on this system has this specific thing. Like, so these people are fighting with details, which are very, very specific, and so, and is that just because of the lack of standards or.
Yeah, it's that, and it's that problems are more or less always the same, but every case is different. And yes, the lack of standards, but there are kind of on 3 levels. There are technical limitation of the system that we are using, like the optics, the sensor, whatever. Then the format in which we package this, and also the limitation of our human perception, and bias is the first issue. So it's very complicated.
Right. Another issue that you brought up had to do with the interpreting video the right way and without bias. And I know you've talked about bias before, but is that something that you are today like trying to communicate to people?
Yes, definitely. It's I mean, it's I've seen it so many times. Like we need to announce this video. We know he's that guy because he's doing all this stuff in this part of the town. No, that's not the right reason, the right way to do it. It's don't ask me. We need to show that he's him. Ask me, can you do a comparison? And or yeah, we know that there are 3 people in the car. You can see clearly, and then you see, and you just see random blobs in the behind the windshield.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It's or forcing yourself to interpret the numbers of a license plate, knowing already the car that you are looking for. That's very dangerous. You should know as little as possible to work on a case.
Right, right. You talked about compression before, and I'm just wondering, and even like things like interpolation and stuff like that. What are some of the main problems with video that an analyst needs to understand or has to deal with?
I think for sure the proprietary formats, the quality issues, because in order to announce a video and in general process a video, you need to understand what defect or defects is affecting the video. You're not, again, just tweaking sliders randomly. Otherwise, first, you won't get anywhere. Second, you will not following a scientific approach. You need to understand which are the issues affecting the video and apply the proper filter to correct them.
And what about things that, like one of the topics that you brought up at the parliament there in your slides was you were talking about the balance between privacy and security. So what can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think this is very important because there is always kind of natural tension, between privacy and security. So we put more cameras, and then our security is hopefully improved, but then privacy is less. So I think it's very important to find the right balance between all point of view. And actually, I would put into this kind of mix also cybersecurity together with physical security and justice, because they are all tied together. And especially Europe with the GDPR are on the front of privacy, of all the privacy issues. And so, for example, the fact that you work with law enforcement or for law enforcement doesn't make you over privacy regulations. Actually, you are even more subject to privacy regulation. You should be very careful. Otherwise, there can be big issues, and rightly so. And yeah, it's something to take into account.
But when you say cybersecurity, can you give me an example of like what you mean?
Yeah, sure. There are many very different aspects about the relation between cybersecurity and image and video evidence. First of all, DVRs, again, are a big risk for cybersecurity because they are normally cheap, outdated, never upgraded devices, which has been used several times in the past for doing huge bot attacks, distributed denial of services. They can be kind of entry point for for a network. They can be exploited in so many ways. So, and that is on one end. On the other end, it's the fact we already mentioned slightly the issue with proprietary video formats coming from different DVRs. So maybe for someone who's not familiar with video forensics, what happens is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different DVRs models on the markets, and each with their own different format, and they need their player. and these players normally are quite low quality software. So if investigators is going to collect, for example, in a street, all videos coming from grocery store, fuel station, likely is getting a bunch of different formats, and for each format he needs to have the right player. So start looking for the player on the internet, on his database, and this introduces a huge cybersecurity risk because you use software which is outdated, done very badly. You maybe look for it on websites which are not always very trustable. And then if you want to expand these cybersecurity issues, are all the stuff also related to deepfakes. We heard so many times already about frauds done with synthetic voice or deepfakes. I think there was a case there was the case about Zelensky, which there was this deepfake of him around. More recently, there was seems a deepfake video of a measure of the measure of Kiev, discussing, I think it was with a Germany politician, but it was not actually the real Kiev measure. It was a deepfake done live. Or there is the kind of how it's called, the fake CEO scam, where someone impersonate with a deepfake voice the I don't know if it's the right word actually, the voice of the CEO, say, I need this urgent bank transfer, and they put the money somewhere.
Right. So, I mean, going forward, things which maybe were not that common, 15, 20 years ago are becoming more common now. So, so when we think about the role that a video analyst might have, like, for example, today and possibly in the future, there may be other things they have to do now, like you just said, like things with cybersecurity, things with deepfake, and the regular things, which I mean, the main roles of a video analyst is how would you break out? Because I think I saw a blog post once where you sort of described sort of two different common things that video analysts typically do. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like one is like authentication and enhancement or things like this.
Yes, let's say that overall you need to. It depends on the question that you get asked. Let's say the more typical request that you get are identification. So could be a person, a vehicle, an object. And you can do kind of face comparison, car vehicle comparison. You can do estimation of height, or some kind of event reconstruction or understanding. So if a car crossed the line, if someone hit another person, so understanding what happened. These are the two main fields. There are various variations, but normally these are the two big questions, let's say. And to approach this in a proper way, you have to follow various steps. Authentication, it's something very important because there are some cases where actually the question is this image trustable, is authentic and original? But in principle, it's something that you should do every time, at least, maybe not a full authentication analysis, but at least when you are given a video, you should ask yourself, is this the original and best copy that I can have? Sometimes can happen that a video has been converted, screen captured, maybe even, unfortunately, we see a lot of those as well, filmed, the screen of the DVR monitor has been filmed with a mobile phone, and that's your evidence. That's not your evidence. That's a video of your evidence. It's like working on a photo on a gun on a ballistic case. So at least you need to pose yourself the question: can I trust this video, or there is some red flag? And then there is enhancement. There is the part of enhancement which is not an aim in itself. It's just an aid to interpretation. Okay, so it's a very important element, especially in video, where often the quality is is not enough, and you want to see better something. Here is very important question. You cannot say, often we get the question, can you enhance this image? That doesn't mean anything. I mean, we don't want a nice image. We want to understand something. Do you want to get a license plate? Do you want to restore the right aspect ratio to see the proportion of a person or an object? It all lies in the question.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So eventually I wanted to talk about the family of products that you have because, and so just a few weeks ago, I was at it's the Ontario Forensic Video Analysts Association. And so David was there and now I was only there for like a day and a half, but I missed part of it, but I had a quick conversation with David. So I didn't realize you have like a whole bunch of different products because the big one is Amp5. That's the one that
Yeah.
5 is the big one. But is that the way you've structured some of your products? Like, how do your products address each of those areas that you just talked about?
Yeah. So Amp5, it's our, let's say, first tool is the big one, and we can think about it as a Swiss Army knife for image and video. So the idea is whatever you need to do with images and videos, you can do it in Amp5. Almost everything, and we are expanding and expanding. So it's you can do from video conversion from proprietary formats, selecting frames. We have motion detection, for example, selecting specific frames in the video or from a specific camera. You can do a lot of announcement. We have all kind of filters, deblurring, frame averaging, super resolution, all the usual basic ones, contrast, brightness, and so on. You can do analysis. We have tools like macro blocks analysis. We have speed estimation. We have single view metrology for height estimation. You can create demonstratives. So you can do, it's not a non-linear editing tool, but you can do simple, let's say, timelines, multi-views, stuff like that. You can do annotations, so put arrows, shapes on the video. You can do reduction. So you can really work on a case from the beginning to the end, and everything that you do, it's reported in a very detailed report, which is automatically generated. And this has always been a key part of our software. The fact that in the report, you see all the steps that we have done, all the parameters, the meaning of the parameters, and all the scientific references to the paper on which the algorithm is based for. So if a judge tells me what you have done, I applied motion blurring with these parameters. Say, who tells me that the algorithm that you have implemented is good? And I say, it's not something secret. It's something published on this university book, and someone else can replicate it in MATLAB or in another product and get the same result. And I think this is essential for the forensic aspect: repeatability, reproducibility, accuracy.
Right. So tell me about Authenticate now. So you got 5, and so you can do some analysis and stuff. And now what about Authenticate? What's its main role?
Authenticate is for, of course, authenticating images. Actually, at the beginning, I tried to put some authentication features in 5, but we realized that the way of working for authentication is so different, which we wouldn't have the optimal workflow. So basically, 5, you have what is now between filters and tools, you have more than 140 different features. In Authenticate, we have I think are more or less between 40 and 50, all dedicated to authentication, which means understanding if a picture is an original or some variation of an original, if it has been manipulated and how, and the device or the software, the social media that has generated or processed that image. And while it has been traditionally focused on images, we are now adding, there are already some video tools in it. And there is a big demand for that. So we are keeping adding video tools.
Okay. So Replay, tell me about Replay, and then tell me about DR Convert as well.
Yeah, so Replay, it's if you think about 5 as the Swiss Army knife for video, and you imagine a lot of tools, some it's very sharp and you can cut yourself. In Replay, we just took the most common tools and the most, let's say, dangerous tools, and put in a standard workflow that an investigator, a frontline officer, not a video expert, can use to work correctly on easy cases. We call it an enhanced video player for investigators. This is more or less the idea. So we convert the videos from proprietary formats. We do basic processing, reduction, annotations, and a report. And it's very important because the vast majority of cases goes first in the hand of the investigators and then of the experts. And it's like being an hospital. You may have the best surgeons, but if people in the ambulance on the emergency room don't treat properly the patient, the best surgeon cannot do much.
You're right. Let me ask you about a paper here. I'm gonna see if I can bring it up. I thought I had it somewhere, but it's actually it's the one from Brandon Epstein. So it was on speed analysis, and I'll bring it up here in a second. But one of the questions was he did reverse projection in there. So in your software you can bring a camera feed in. Okay. So is that in which is that Amped or is that something else?
No, we do something. We don't do reverse projection. We work directly on the video evidence. Okay, you need to go back to the scene, take some reference measurements, but actually you can measure the speed of a vehicle directly from that video. And let's say the concept in itself, speed estimation, is pretty simple. It's space divided time. That's it. The problem is error estimation. That is the big, and we worked for so long time to get it right and do something sensible from the scientific point of view. Because you need to properly, of course, there are many issues. There are the issues of correcting optical distortion, which is very often coming in camera. And then there is the uncertainty on the timing and the uncertainty on the position of the car.
Like where the analyst chooses the point.
Exactly. So we did we discuss a lot, and we read a lot of error estimation papers and documents to do it right. We did a lot of validation, really a lot, and we found some way which works quite well. And the analyst can choose the points on various frames and set as different uncertainty for every frame, depending on the resolution in that part. Can exclude some frames, can work differently whether the trajectory is straight or curved. And for the timing, that's probably the hardest part, because DVRs are not always 100% reliable. But so you need to understand you need to have the original file first of all, and then you need to estimate. You can work on the timestamp in different way. You can use the average frame rate, the PTS, the timestamp actually with the date and time saved by the DVR, and depending on the case, you need to do your own little validation, understand which is the right one. And then you combine these two values and the errors, and you get the result plus a certain error rate.
Okay. And if I recall correctly, like if you had, for example, 5 frames, you have 4 intervals, and then you could calculate the distance between each of those intervals, and or you could do the whole. You could do all of them, or I think you even have like cumulative. You had like a number of different options.
Yeah. At the end, if the trajectory is straight, the error becomes very, very little over. You don't need, even if, let's say, the accuracy on single frames, it may not be great. That can be sometimes. If you have 5, 10 frames, it quickly goes to a very good level.
Right. And just so I'm clear, because I asked originally about the first paper, which was Brandon Epstein was using like the video feed, and then you try to put things back in place. But actually what you're talking about is a newer feature in 5.
Yes, we launched it at the beginning of this year.
Right. Okay. Let me ask you very quickly about, for example, suspect height. So what tools do you have for analyzing a suspect's height or an object or something in the video?
Yeah, so basically there are two methods you can do in 5. One is, let's say the most specific is what we call Measure 3D, as is based also on some very well-known paper from Cremonesi called single view metrology. And basically, you model the perspective of the scene, indicating parallel lines in the real world, which looks like converging in the image. And so the software understands how is the perspective and the scene going. Because, of course, if I'm closer, I will be bigger in the image, and if I'm far away, I will be smaller. So you need to compensate that. And also there we have an error estimation, and you can do your own validation on the different scenes. But the method it's normally quite accurate if you can reliably define these parallel lines. If you are not sure, like some people sometimes is trying to use, I don't know, the lanes in a street or the sidewalk, which may not be perfectly straight. That's a bit risky. For this reason, I know a few of our users, what they did is kind of create a big checkerboard carpet they bring on the crime scene, and they calibrate the scene there very accurately, and then the method is working very well.
Right, excellent.
And the other method that you can do with what we have called video mixer is the classical reverse projection, when you compare two images, basically.
Okay. You sort of alluded to this before, because you mentioned that, you know, you're working sometimes with like different people and universities on new things and research. So how important is research for you personally?
No, I mean, we started from research, and it's our oxygen, let's say, looking at the future. And I think one important thing is that research is not always successful, because otherwise it's not research. So we try different things, even things that we don't have much hope for, but we want to understand. We do research when we can. One example is face enhancement with AI. You have seen a bit of my blog post, so you see that I'm somewhat critical of AI for forensics, or at least you need to use it within certain boundaries, especially for enhancement is very, very critical. But still, you can see these papers. They show from 16 pixels, fantastic faces. First of all, what I wrote again in a blog post, I mentioned always the blog post because we have so many, I spoke about everything. This, an AI image is not an enhanced image, is a new recreated image. So it's not the original, it's something completely different. Still, we wanted to view if this methodology could work in practice to recognize, improve recognition in a human observer. So what we did is do a survey on a few persons, and I think maybe 100 or 200 people replied to our survey. We zoomed images of celebrities from very low resolution images with a bicubic standard interpolation, and with state-of-the-art AI face enhancement. And basically, the results are that the recognition level is on average the same. In some cases, the AI performs better, in sometimes the bicubic. The problem is that the bicubic is blurred, but still you can, if you know the celebrity, you can still recognize them.
Right.
For the AI, sometimes you get very nice faces, sometimes you get something completely wrong, and you don't know how and why. And in essence, that's dangerous, because sometimes gives you the illusion of having a good image, but it's an image that you can trust. You cannot do compare the shape of the eyes or the ears or the mouth. Even if it's look good, it's you put trust in something fake.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, because I think you mentioned that, you know, you talk about AI, and even AI, it can't infer what is not there. So it has to create something. So is it actually producing the same image, or of the actual person, or is it a creation now?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's the important question, right? So how I think that's a major issue, because, you know, depending on somebody's, you know, really, if only a few pixels in an image, and all of a sudden you use AI and all of a sudden you've got a completely different person. So there's a major risk there, I think is partly what you're saying.
Yeah, and let's say the main issues are the black box approach. So basically, the AI, you train the AI, but and learns from data, but you don't know how it works. That's a limit in theory that you can overcome. There are explainable or interpretable AIs, but is not what they are normally used for this kind of job. So they are not practical yet, as far as I know, for this kind of application.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the introduction of bias, because you are actually introducing bias in your image, because depending on the data set that you use to train the AI, you will get a different output image. So let's say if you take my face, very low resolution, and enhance it with an AI trained on Asian females, I will likely become an Asian female in the picture.
Well, that's
it's
a
an
good
extreme
point.
example, but it's what actually is happening.
Right. No, that makes total sense. I want to ask you about something that you worked on as well. And I want to make sure I try and get some of these in here before we run out of time. But this one here, so this is a paper that was done not too long ago, and has about its perspective registration and multi-frame super resolution. So can you explain? And in the example that you talked about here, you talk about license plates, for example, and so perspective registration is one thing, and then super resolution. Can you explain the difference between both and what it is that your research was and how you've implemented this inside of the AMP software?
Yeah, sure. So basically, one of the most common cases that we have, it's a static camera which is filming a car which is approaching or leaving a scene. So basically, the question is, we want to get the license plate. From single frames, the quality is normally not enough, but we can put together many frames and either reduce the noise or increase the resolution. So the problem is that this, if you think about taking only the part of the license plate, of course, the perspective of the license plate is changing, and also its size. So if you want to put together these frames, the first step is aligning all these different license plates in order to overlay them. And since the beginning, Amp5 had a feature called perspective registration. The problem is that it was a manual approach. So you have to manually select all the angles of a license plate in all the frames, and this first step of alignment has been done. There was an optimization, but the process was very manual. And we tried for a long time techniques to do it automatically, which seems easy in theory, but the problem is that on the typical image quality, when this feature is needed, it was not working. It was working on good quality images, but we don't need that. So we did a lot of test and test the different combination of algorithms. Actually, there is a pretty complex math behind it. There is one of the author of the paper, Gabriele Guarnieri, is a colleague, electronic engineer, but is very, very good with maths. And when we were developing this algorithm, he was like scratching his head and writing this long paper with formulas that and so that is the part of the alignment. Then you put together these frames, and you can either do a simple average between frames, like this is called frame averaging. And what happens is that if you have several noisy images of the same object, noise is a random variation on the pixel value. So sometimes will be +2, another time will be -1, another +10, and so on. If you have enough images, the let's say that the noise will tend to 0, and you just get the license plate or anything else. The other is the super resolution. Super resolution is something different. Takes multiple frames to create an image of high resolution. So the results are a bit more, can get better details, but the images are less smooth. Depending on the case, one works better than the other.
So does it have to do with because what I'm trying to imagine is like if you have a license plate, for example, and it's only taking up, like whatever, like 40 by, 10 pixels,
Yeah.
then how do you get more resolution of it? Is it just because it's blurred or something, and then it's kind of like a frame averaging, it becomes more crisp?
Okay, you put together many frames, and the idea is that you have subpixel movements. Okay, so imagine there is a border. One is ideally you have where there is a letter, you have a white pixel and a black pixel. Okay, but actually normally you don't have precisely one pixel movement. You have like a pixel in between, which will be gray and will be more or less gray depending on the position. So you estimate the position from the shift, and you create this subpixel. This is the idea.
Okay. Hey, I want to bring something else up too, which I think is really interesting. And I mean, I've known about this for a little while, and that had to do with that the sensor on any particular camera, whether it's a digital SLR or whatever, it has a certain characteristic of noise or of certain characteristics that you can analyze. And so, what have you guys implemented, or what can you do now? I'm assuming that this is in Authenticate. Would this be in the Authenticate product? Okay. So how successful, how robust are these techniques on modern day equipment or CCTV cameras and such?
Okay, we have this feature both for images and for videos, and it used to be very robust. It was really great because basically it was using the sensor noise to verify whether a picture was coming from a specific device or not. So not only the model, but the specific exemplar. Okay.
Can I ask how you do that though? Like, do you have to train it, or do you have to have some other source, like a different
yes,
video?
you have to put a few. You have to take a few pictures with the same device. You create the noise profile. We recommend, I think, 30 pictures, but often with less you can do it. And then you compare this noise profile, which is basically an image of a specific kind of noise, and see the correlation. And you can do on images or on video. And this noise is very robust. So even if you upload the picture to social media or you send it through WhatsApp, the noise stays still there. So let's say you see a mobile phone and you say, oh, you have this incriminating picture. And you say, no, its picture is not mine, it's been sent by my friend. And actually you can verify from, even if it's recompressed, even if it's tampered to an extent, this is still visible on most of the image. In fact, you can also use the inconsistencies to spot
deep
manipulation
or fake.
Yeah. And so the problem is that on modern devices, especially smartphones, not on all smartphones, but on some smartphones, is not always working. And the problem, and also I mentioned this a few years ago in one of my blog posts, is computational photography. As you know, nowadays, most of the stuff, most of the picture generation in a smartphone is not done at the optics level, but in software. So, for example, we found that peer review is not working very well in iPhones when there is the portrait mode, which makes sense because they combine also signals from multiple cameras. So we don't work with a sensor anymore. And we published actually a paper on that, which has been quite popular. And we find some solution for identifying at least when we can trust the peer review and when we cannot. But a solution, an overall solution to this problem, let's see, it's a bit hard.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So that it's not stable. It's not repeatable. And so on something which is just grabbing something from the sensor and creating that picture, that's okay. That works. But if it's doing something afterwards, you lose that characteristic. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially, I mean, basic post-processing is not a problem. I mean, brightness, denoising. But when you do advanced stuff, and especially stuff with AI, again, because a lot of modern devices use AI in automatic mode for pictures, starts to be tricky.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I have another question, and that has to do. You did a post, or you made a comment once on something you were working on that has to do with I think it was called the theoretical justification of the order of which you apply filters. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I think actually, spoiler, I'm writing a quite long blog post on this topic because it's very important. And the idea is, what is the order in which you apply different algorithms while doing processing? As we said before, we need to understand what are the defects in an image or video and correct those problems. But then the question is, in which order you correct? And when you ask to different experts, you get various replies, and one popular is correct the worst problem first. But it is actually not very correct, in my opinion. It's like when you are dressing yourself, okay? You put first your socks, and then you put your shoes. When you have to remove them, you take first your shoes and then your socks, okay? Is the same, because all these defects are put in a specific phase of the image generation process. So we have the scene, the light coming from the scene comes into the optics, impact the sensor, then there is some processing in the camera, there is encoding in the camera or in the DVR, and then there is the visualization of this. In each phase, so for example, the distortion from the lens comes before what you can say, the noise or the encoding from JPEG artifacts. So you should first correct this, and after you correct the lens distortion. And this is pretty intuitive, but there is also some mathematical justification. It's the inverse function. And we are actually now doing again some work with the university to show some more precise theoretical explanation from a mathematical point of view of this. And I hope a paper will come out soon on this. And I think this topic, why is so important? Because again, it's it relates to the proper workflow and the scientific foundation of what we do. And a common question is, how can you justify the fact, how can you be sure that the processed images are accepted in court? Because they are not the original. Yes, they are not the original, but we don't care. I mean, we care the original for the chain of custody, but we care more about authenticity than originality. Authenticity means that the image is a faithful and trustful representation of the actual scene. Okay, the original scene, if I have lens distortion in the original scene, the walls were not curved. Okay, the license plate was not blurred. That is a technical limitation of the device. So if I want a more accurate representation of the scene, I need to correct the defects introduced by the image generation process. And I think this is very important for the acceptability of this.
Okay. I want to ask you about newer cameras, or maybe some newer devices that you're seeing, and if you're addressing any of those. And like the one that I'm thinking of are things like, for example, in-car cameras now. There's a lot more, and especially like body-worn cameras. Like, are you doing anything that are helping with the motion from like body-worn cameras are notorious, right? Because the officers are moving around. So is there anything that you're doing there with like blurring and that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, let's say that all our tools work on every kind of video. So yeah, body-worn cameras are a very popular source nowadays, and probably stabilization is one of the big issues, and also reduction, because very often you need to blur faces or pixelate for privacy. So yeah, they are a popular source. We don't have specific function for those, because the problems that you find in one source are more or less the same that you find in other sources.
Okay. We talked about sort of you've been doing a lot of work like with the awareness and like getting the word out there and everything else. And so I was interested in training. And so obviously, when you go to a conference and you're speaking, that's sort of a form of training. But do you guys well, let me ask you this. What kind of training do you have, for example, for people who are on the receiving end? And what kind of training do you have for the video analysts as well? Like what are the different packages or different things that you're offering in terms of training?
Yeah, we have various. We have basically the training for each product, but they are not, let's say, push button training. We go a lot into the background, the foundation of the science of image processing, the challenges with the video evidence. I explained this image generation model. So we show you not only how to use the software, but how to understand what you are doing. Okay, this is for, and we have, I mean, the normal class for Amp5, and then we have specific modules on determining some topics like speed estimation, height measurement, video evidence presentation, understanding proprietary video formats. Similar, we have a course for Authenticate, which explain Authenticate as a software probably easier than 5, but the difficulty is understanding how to interpret the output. It's like doing a X-ray, let's say, to the image. Doing the X-rays is easy. Interpreting it's the hard part. Mm-hmm. And then we have a training called Investigating Video Evidence, which is for first responders. So differently from the other trainings, which are for experts, this is for people which is new to video, but they need to understand the basic elements.
Okay. And in terms of getting out there, conferences and things like that, and I mean, you have people, you have like an office in the US, and you have, and Italy is where you're based. But how do you get involved with other organizations? Do you get involved with just other conferences and things like that? Like, what are your main ones that you're doing?
Yeah, we do a lot of conference, trade shows, and all the stuff, and we are involved with the Amp5 Digital Image Working Group. We are involved with my colleague in the US are involved in OSAC, in ZWIGD. Mm-hmm. So I think these are very, very important aspects, because it's kind of so we cover all the important aspects of our profession, from the research with the cooperation with the university, the cooperation with actual end users, and the cooperation with these very, very important organizations, in my opinion, which sets guidelines, standard, and try to help directing our field in the right direction.
Yeah, I want to just for everyone who hasn't seen it already, like if you want to kill maybe a month or so, you can just go to the blog and start reading, because there's a ton of posts and a lot of really, really great information there. So they Martino, you guys have done a really great job of putting a ton of information. It's just you get deeper and deeper as you go. So I've put the link there, and if anyone wants to head over and check it out, that's really great. So it's good that you're doing that. I think you should definitely keep that up. It's a fantastic resource. So that's probably something, and I don't know if it's something more recent, but it seems like something you've been doing for years now.
Yeah, I started with the beginning of the company. I think the first post is from 2007 or 2008. Don't go there to read it, because it will be probably embarrassing. But
yeah. Let me ask you about one post, and I think initially maybe we can talk about it a little bit, but it had to do with that the Rittenhouse case in the US, and there were some things that came up there, and I'll just leave it with you, and what kinds of things happened with your post and what you were trying to communicate.
Yeah, let's say there were various issues in the trial. One thing which I think it's positive from the trial is that made people realize in a hard way how difficult is video evidence. So it's kind of wake-up call. And I heard that courts nowadays are a bit more careful with video, which is a good thing, in my opinion. The problem is that it was a pretty polarizing case. Okay, so I wrote some months before a blog post on AI. Okay, and I explained that okay, did various consideration, quite technical, but with a logical scheme. And I say, okay, you can use and you can't use AI in this and this situation. So basically, I say you cannot use images enhanced with AI as evidence. So, and that was it. It was a kind of generic discussion, not about it. No product was mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
As often we do in our blog, we reason about important topics and not necessarily just about the software. So actually, it happened that the prosecutor was using Amp5 in that case, and so the people supporting the defense start to to scream on socials. And even on newspapers, say the author of the software says that it should not be used on evidence, which is I didn't write that. I mean, it's done for that reason, which was crazy. And I didn't want to involve with these people on Twitter because I mean, but I had to clarify, and I did one single tweet, which was viewed, I think, more than 100,000 times, and got a lot of bad comments and discussion. It's I really didn't like, because what I wrote was instrumentalized, but it was taken completely wrong, putting in my mouth things that I didn't say. And yeah, that's
yeah, it can happen.
A lot of fun.
yeah, it can happen. It's not the fun part, and Twitter's the worst for that, because it's a battlefield is really all it is.
Yeah.
No, I understand. Hey, listen, just we're getting on in time, but talk to me about the Discord channel you have, because it's one of the main ways that you use to communicate with your users, right?
I really it's been for a long time that we had the users requesting a way to network kind of a community, and especially working with law enforcement worldwide, it's a bit delicate argument, let's say. How can you make people from different countries network and exchange ideas? And so I was thinking a mailing list, a forum, and at the end there was coming Discord and other chat systems, and I took inspiration from another Discord server called the Digital Forensics and Incident Response, the FEAR, which is pretty popular. And I say, okay, let's try. I started in a kind of private, first only with people inside the company, then to some trusted users we invited one by one, and then I don't know now, it's maybe 1 year or a bit less, there is public only for our users. And there are very interesting, very technical conversations. It does not replace official support. There is no one in the company who has the role to monitor that. It's and it's more for fostering discussion between the users. So sometimes we reply, often actually, if they have problems, questions, but also very often users give better answers that we do, and that's great.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a kind of forum. It's a way for people to offer help with users to help each other, right? So I think that's the important part. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, look, we're getting on in time, and what I want to do is just say, like, if people want to get a hold of you, I mean, I've already put the website up several times, but and I know you're on LinkedIn here too. Can I put up am I able to put up your LinkedIn thing here, or?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just put that up, because I know that if people want to get a hold of you, maybe that could be one way.
Yeah, that's a good that's a good way.
Yeah. So Martino, just look him up. Like I said, I'm very pleased to have this discussion with you, and I'm really pleased with the kind of research that you guys are doing. It's nice to see that that level of involvement and engagement or whatever. Personally, I love that sort of thing, and I think it's important, because it kind of tells you. I always tell some of the students as well, like, research is the playground, right? And that tells you how far you can go in many instances, right? Mm-hmm. So better to make the mistakes and realize the problems in research than in practice. And so, good on you. So, hey, thank you so much. And I hope we catch up soon in person sometime.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Eugene. It was a pleasure.
All right. Hey, hang back for a second, and then I'll come right back. All right, folks, that does it for this one. Just very quickly. So over the summer months, we're going to go to every 2 weeks. So we're going to be planning over the next 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. We're going to have a few planned forensics talks, interviews. They will be pre-recorded, but we will try to be there live in the chat window. So if you are available over the summer, Thursdays, 2 p.m., we are definitely going to be there. So once again, I want to say thanks to everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for being back here, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Bye-bye.